There's no one whom he could share it with. There's, so when he was happy, there was no one to speak happy words, or when he was depressed, or when he was difficult, and there was no one with whom he could speak about who his sadness. So he said that there's for a place for a beggar in a place with no people, there's no one to share anything. And so it's probably a very depressing and difficult thing to be, to stay as a beggar in a place. And so it can be very, very depressing. However, what Dusum Kempa said is that when you remember the qualities of the Lama and supplicate them with great fervor, then the power of the devotion or the strength of the blessings is uninterrupted. And so for that reason, Milarepa was able to stay in a place where there are no humans and no one other than the deer and the animals around. It's like when you have it's like having devotion that is like a strong iron rod in your heart. But if you have that strength of devotion, then it is necessary for practice. Likewise, if we think about Gyalo Gyatsampa, he stayed at the place called Gutsang Cave, or Gutsang Rock, and he spent 12 years practicing at that cave, at that cliff. There was just him for one, the second was the cave, and the third was the rock. And he said he would stay there until he achieved enlightenment, and so in the end he became called as the Gutsangpa. So that he decided to stay there until the person, his clothes, and his cave were all known to the same thing. And so when you think about become someone whom, when you think of him, you'd remember the Gutsang cliff. And so he stayed there for an extremely long time, practicing extremely hard for many times. For a long time. And so when people would think about the person who's practicing meditation in Gutsang cliff, they'd think about that person, the Gutsangpa. So the person, the cliff, and the cliff, until these three are all known by the same name, he would practice the Dharma. This is the commitment that he made. And so at that time, that at Gutsang cliff there were not many people. And so the power of his devotion. But it said for the strength of his devotion, his supplications could be heard by people at on the other side of the valley. It's like the echo, and the echo could also be heard of these supplications. And so in this way, and sometimes there are different types of supplications. It's maybe better not to say too much about each of them. The next one is a way to supplicate and improve your practice through physical postures. So think of the inconceivable qualities, and activity of the Buddhas. Think about all the sentient beings who have the bad karma and afflictions, bad intentions. Think that there are all these, that all the sentient beings, all the Buddhas of the past and all the Bodhisattvas of the past have appeared. They have appeared, and yet we still have not. We have not received their compassion yet. So they have taught us many different types of dharma, but like guiding a path onto the best, or running water uphill. Sentient beings such as myself are extremely difficult to lead. Somebody's saying, kneel with your two hands. Place your chin on the knees. so forth, describing postures for your hands, and supplicating with great fervor. Think that there's no sentient being for all sentient beings wandering in the sum. There's no other notes for them to place hopes in, no other protector, no other champion for them. Placing your hands together and then leaning back and looking at the sky and supplicating. Supplicate until you feel the devotion from deep within. Then, after doing these postures, you relax like a cow passing water. And then rest without it, without modifying anything. And meditate until you develop great compassion. It's not just a question of changing your mind, it's also changing the postures and to sit in different positions, like the postures of grieving. You sit in these postures of grieving and changing the posture of your body. And in this way, then you need to also supplicate to the Guru. Now, when we receive this, we think that all conditions are the same, and we read all the instructions just as they are, and the students listen to these instructions once, and then everyone feels satisfied with it. Actually, instructions and and particular key instructions are something that we need to hear again over, that we need to think about. We need to train in them, always examine to see whether we have developed them in our being. Generally, we do not do this many times. We do not really respect them. We do not listen to them many times, and so for that reason, then the instruction manuals are basically just manuals that we just count them as numbers of manuals. Other than that, they're not really anything for us. Sometimes we talk about ask the Guru to give a teaching or to give an empowerment, but actually, they're the 84,000 Dharma teachings of the Bhagavan Buddha, as we're talking about. In the Tibetan, we have in the Kanjur, we have many different sutras that were taught by the Buddha. There are over 100 volumes of the Kanjur. And it's even difficult for us to even just look at them, to open them up and actually read them, and we consider so we're even reluctant to just open them and read them. But sometimes when we actually look at the Guru, we think about the Lama. If the Guru gives really good instructions, and people think this, there's a thought, oh, maybe this person can do it, maybe that. But if you have like an authentic Lama, even if they give you the true instructions, if that person themselves does not put it into practice, and is just satisfied to have heard the instructions, it's just letting it be, and just leave it as thinking, oh, I heard the instructions, I received the instructions, then there's no distinction of whether we have met an authentic Guru, whether we have listened to authentic instructions. There's another supplication. Meditate the Guru as before. Make offerings and visualize visualize all of the root and lineage lamas as if they're directly in front of you. Visualize them clearly. Go for refuge. Ask them to take care of you. Ask them to take you. Take you. And gradually, from the root lama to everyone devotes and dissolves into the Bhagwan Buddha, the Shakyamuni Buddha. And from the space between his four, there radiate lights of many different colors, billions of light rays, filling all of the millions and billions of universes, touching all sentient beings. From the incessant hell to the peak of existence, and imagine that they are immediately brought to the state of Buddhahood. Then with great faith and devotion, focus entirely on the body of the Shakyamuni, and rest within that state. Then visualize the lamas either in a column or in a crowd, or visualize them clearly. And supplicate the lamas again with one-pointed devotion. And visualize this 100 or 1,000 times, saying "Nomi Guru Lama Kyema," and chant this loudly with a great fervor. Then imagine that all the lamas then melt into you like water melting into water, or butter melting into butter. If this does not really reach the critical point, then any dharma that you do will only work to accomplish your temporary needs of this life. So supplicate the Lama until you feel that everything the Lama does is good. Listen to everything that they say. Think that with everything you'll do everything that you can to perfect the Lama's wishes. And practice with such great effort and devotion. Now we are with supplication to thinking about the precious human life that is difficult to. If we were born in one of the 8 places, then we'd have no place to be able to practice, where to practice. So in any of the places that lack leisure are far more numerous. The beings in these realms are far more numerous than humans who can practice the Dharma. In each of the different hell realms, there are more beings than there are in the human realm. Not to mention the other realms as well. This section of the text describes the different lacks of leisures in each of the different realms, or those different beings, the barbarians, the mutes, and the idiots, and so forth. Think that it is the human life is even more difficult to find than a star in the daytime, or a pin that has been more difficult than a pin that has been thrown into a haystack, and for a blind man to find that pin. So they visualize the practice Guru Yuga and imagine that and develop great compassion for all sentient beings in the places that lack leisure. And so supplicate the Lama, glorious Lama, me and all those sentient beings who are my kind parents have been born in places with bad burns. Protect us and guide us to the higher realms, and to practice it. His Holiness is discussing a text, typographical error in the text. In order to practice the Dharma, if we need to practice the entire path that will guide us to liberation and omniscience, the support that is necessary for that is, in order to have that, we have to have the precious human body with the 8 leisures and the 10 resources. So the greatest support for this is the greatest support for achieving that. So when we talk about the eight leisures, that means that we have all of the support. The 10 resources mean that we have all of the resources that we need, and the 8 leisures mean that we are free of all the impediments. And so because we are free of all the impediments, we have the 8 leisures. Now, we normally, when we think about it, the greatest support for practicing the Dharma, we don't really even have an understanding or recognize that we have the greatest support for practicing the Dharma, the support that lacks the impediments. It has all the supports. We do not recognize it. We don't realize that. The reason we think about this is because when we think about the hells, the hells we don't have much feeling about. When we talk about the hungry ghosts, then we don't. It's just something that is taught in the text. Other than that, it's not something that we have any direct experience of. When you talk about animals, there's something that we can see with our eyes, but the animals, we have this feeling that animals and humans are different. So animals and humans, I said, I think I'm not going to change into an animal. I haven't become an animal. So we don't think that actually there's no thought that we might become an animal. We don't think about that. And we think about the other types of humans, like we talk about barbarians or those who live in those with wrong views. We do have some understanding that. For example, usually when we talk about barbarians and those in outline lands, often we distinguish between these two. The barbarians, here we mean by that, often it's said that the barbarians and those who live in outlying lands are the same. So the outlying lands means, when we talk about the outlying lands in terms of the central land, has become feeling kind of uncomfortable teaching the Dharma. It's not like this, some sort of an obstacle. When we talk about the outlying lands, there is something there is a description of these by the Acharya Powell in the Tanjura, as well as a sutra on the 8 lacks of leisures in the Chinese. And I tried to see if I could translate that sutra it's in Chinese. I thought if I could see if I could translate. Now, I've been able to translate most of it. There are a few verses that I haven't been able to do, to translate. But it's very clear in this. Here, outlying land means a place where depends upon whether or not the four communities are present or not. So if there are the four communities, then that is a central country. So a country that has the four communities, the male and female lay, and the bhikkhus and bhikkshunis, is a central land, and those that do not would be an outlying land. Now the four communities here. Uh, there's a commentary by the Nagarjuna that talks about the four communities as being the bhikshu, bhikshuni, the lay male, and the lay female practitioners with the lay precepts. As I've said before, in having discussion, there's something that made me and the people doing the jewel ornament doing this. So we made us laugh. We Tibetans are Buddhists, are barbarians. And so if we think about it, this is when we talk about the barbarians and the outlying lands as being the same. And so when you talk about it in this way, then it's quite humorous that that we Tibetans would be barbarians. It's just talking about barbarians and outlying people as being the same. If we think about people who are in the Middle East, for example, with a lot of conflict and strife and war in these countries, and if we were born in one of these lands, what would it be like? It would be different whether we could actually stay alive. There's doubt whether we could remain living, let alone practicing the Dharma. If you think about the other countries in the world, there's some countries, such great deprivation and poverty and hunger or famine and drought. Sometimes there's not even any water to drink. There's so little to drink that they have nothing to drink other than they can't get anything else other than the urine from oxen. And if we were born in such a place, what would it be like? And so for these reasons, if we think about this world that we're on, there are many deprived and difficult situations where there's warfare, war, famine, and poverty. And if we were born in these places, we'd just fall into the suffering and experience the difficulties of it. What sort of a situation would we be in? What would it be like? We have to think about this. And only once we think about that, then can we understand what sort of potential we have, or what type of abilities we have, the potential we have for living, and then on the potential we have to practice the Dharma. And when we think about it in that way, then only at that point we can see how many opportunities we have, how many facilities and fortunate conditions we have. Only at that point can we really understand this. So if we were, so in this situation that we are free of such impediments, that we have everything we need, what does that mean? If we think that it means that we're really something and that we've got lots of skills, it doesn't mean that. Primarily what it means is that we have a particular responsibility. We have all the facilities that we need. We are free of the impediments, and we have such an opportunity, and that means that we have a responsibility to shoulder. And for the sake of those who do not, and we need to think for the sake about those who do not have such opportunities. And so we need to encourage ourselves to think in that way. So it is important for us to think about this. That is the reason why we need to think about the precious human body. Think about how we have all of the facilities. We lack the impediments. So we have this opportunity. In English we say opportunity. So we have a special opportunity, so we need to use it properly. We need to make it meaningful. We need to make efforts so that this opportunity that we have achieved becomes meaningful. Trying to develop, think about this. This is an actual example. In Iraq. You all know where Iraq is, right? Iraq. There's a young girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old. So there's a 5 or 6 year old girl in Iraq. The girl's mother has died. She has no mother. The mother is dead. So there's this young girl who has no mother. And so this little girl drew a large picture of her mother on a cement road outside of a school. And after drawing that, she placed her shoes very carefully outside the picture. And she drew that big picture of the mother, and then in the lap of the mother, she lay down as if she were sleeping in her mother's lap. Now her mother is dead. She has no mother. She draws this picture of her mother. She draws the picture of her mother, and then what she needs, she misses her mother. She really wants her mother, but her mother's not there. And so without her mother, she draws a huge picture of her mother, and in the center of this, she lies down in the middle of that drawing. And so this is something that helps her, makes her think, oh, I'm sleeping in my mother's lap. She has that feeling. And so this is something that actually happens. And so what is that? When we think about that, it's like we think that has no opportunity, we think. She has no way to help her, but if there's any way to comfort her. And so in order to comfort her, she draws the picture of her mother and lies down in the mother's lap. And so we're not like that. It's not like we are different than a young child who's parted from her parents, from her mother at the age of 5 or 6. In any case, we have all the facilities we need. And if we follow our desires, then we'll never be able to fulfill all of our desires. So there's this a wise man who said, contentment is a naturally present jewel. It is a jewel that is naturally within us. It's not something that we need to get outside. It's that we find outside or buy outside. It's something we have within ourselves. If we know how to be content, then we are rich. If we do not have contentment, no matter how many $1 billion we have, we're still like a beggar. We will feel like we never have enough. We feel like we've not got something, that we need more. There's not even a moment where I have the sense that now I've got what I need, now I have all the resources I need. So contentment is a naturally present jewel that we have. And to think about all the opportunities we have, all the facilities we have, all the teachers and so forth. We don't need. It's okay. We just think about that. We don't need to think about the hells or the hungry ghosts or the long-lived gods or anything. We think about this about this earth that we live in, us being able to gather here in Bodh Gaya. We have everything we need to eat. Everything we need to drink. Generally, we have enough to live us. On that, we have everything we need to practice the Dharma. So we have everything that we need. We are free of the impediments. It's just something that we need to think about. We actually have it. Sometimes there are people when you have all the, we just sort of take them for granted. So we need to think about how that we have. We often take them for granted, but that's not how it is. In Tibet, if we think about in Sopo Monastery, when I was in Sopo Monastery, the monasteries that the way the monks at Sopo Monastery lived in was very different than the way the monks in India live. And the reason is that you had to make your own room. You had to spend your own money or your family's money. You had to raise the money. And you had to make your own place to live. There was no one from the monastery administration who was giving any money. Food, you have to get your own food. You have to eat your own breakfast and lunch. So then, after I got it, then they started saying that there's milk or that there's tea. So this happened after I arrived at Sopa. This is something that became really widely known. It was the first time that it happened. This idea of going to go get tea in the morning and going to get tea in the afternoon or something like that. So, if you came to get the tea, then you could go. But other than that, you had to go make your own food in your own stove in your own room. And still, even in addition to that, there was still a lot of harsh discipline and difficult living there. It's not like to think. But there's no one who thought that this was inappropriate or wrong. But you think about now in India, if we have a place to stay, the monastery gets that ready. The monastery provides food, provides our clothes, they provides our services. Everything is provided for us. And so we don't think that it's much of anything at all. We think, of course it's there. We go to the Gajing, it's like if we come to the Gunju, we think, of course they're going to make the preparations for us. We think, if something doesn't go, they think it's not okay. So we just take everything for granted. But there's nothing but everything that we're taking granted, none of it falls from the sky or grows from the ground. We have to spend put a lot of expense to that. Last year we had very thin mattresses. Last year, in the third year, we've bought thicker mattresses that were made in southern India. It's made out of some sort of, and so these are made out of coconut husks. And for just alone, this 30 lakh went for those alone. And so when we provide all of these mattresses, these are not something that fall from the sky or grow from the earth. We don't have a lot of income. We don't sell anything. We don't have things that we're selling. It's everything that the faith people out of great faith and devotion make offerings to us. It's not that it's necessarily rich people, it's the people who are just giving what they have out of great generosity. Most of the people who are making offerings are not rich. Even if they do have rich, they go to a lot of effort to get their money, and then and only then give it away. And in any case, if we're too rich, if we have too many, if we take it all for granted, and so we must not do that. We must think about it. Let's think about how we have all the facilities and how we lack the impediments. And so we have this particular opportunity. So what this means is that we have a particular opportunity we have to take on. So we have to really think about this carefully. And so for this, when we think about the precious human body, talk about the body with its pleasures and riches, what does it mean to have received with such pleasures and riches? It means that we are we are able to accomplish this. It means that we're able to achieve the state of liberation and emission, and that with the support of this body, we need to achieve liberation and emissions. And so it is important for us to think about this very carefully.
所讲的这
And so
个
when we
三
talk
个
about
区
the
别，
section,
三中的这个痛苦，要怎样去思维呢？也就是说，三过去，八仙下
if we think about the
大的
eight such the lower realms, we think about it as being eight different
八
pits.
无暇的这个坑，
It's like a big hole or pit in the ground. We think of these eight different gates, and then on the top of these,
坑口自己的
it's like you're standing right on the edge of that precipice.
口就是非常的然后他
And when you do that, and when you're standing on the edge of a precipice, like you think you're going to fall, and you start to tremble out of this. Just standing there thinking, looking at it, and if your one foot slips, either you're going to fall in you'll fall in the hells or in the hungry ghost. And this is the way you have to think about it. And so you sit today. So like you're standing there with your legs trembling while standing on the edge of this precipice. And so when you think about it this way, we must not let ourselves lose this opportunity.
然后接下来是在讲这个
And so now it's a section think about how difficult it is to achieve.
新的这个
So there are many different examples for how difficult this human body is, such as example of the blind turtle who comes up to the surface of the ocean once in 100 years, sticking his head through a small yoke, a small yoke that's floating on the ocean, and so forth.
要给这样讲完整的人生，一定要让自己想让完整的人生获得随意去人生真正的所以这样方式，然后对众生对身体有信心。
So when you meditate upon this thoroughly enough, then you see everything that accomplished something for the prosperity in this life as like poisoned food that you would not let get near your mouth.
一样的去慰藉他从外面
This is. I've run out of time. So in this way, this year is our last year of spending 3 years reciting on collected topics, and during this time we have been collected topics, the types of evidence and the types of evidence. Now, in the types of mind and the types of evidence, we have been using the text by the Namgyalapa, and then this was a good basis for us to spend several years debate. Now, for the collected topics, we found a root text for the collected topics. And so this is actually kind of disputed root text for that. We talk about the.
对方他们说是
Some people say it's this text was written by Jamal Sheba,
并
and
且
others say it's written by Kunisheneba.
那么既然
Kansan masters say that it was written by Shama Chikiwancho.
向发取
And in any case, in the past we didn't really know. Later,
这样大家都
everyone started taking an interest, and only at that point did we figure it out. At this point, we didn't think about this at all. In any case, we found these root texts and for that reason, this year these root texts, the three texts are like the three books about the collected topics have become like a commentary on these root texts. And at the end, there is a and it's said it doesn't say that it was written by. It says it was written by Tashi in the colophon to the text. So we're talking about the Tashiki. Tashikis are slightly different from other presentations, and so for these root texts, it's to make it. And the commentaries written. It's primarily that I wrote it. So if we have some time in the future, I will give an explanation of the colophon to that text. And the reason for that is the way of thinking about this and analyzing, researching the text. And so that's one thing I'd like to say. And the second thing I'd like to say is the final part of our Gunchu will be the four-day conference on the jewel ornament of liberation. The jewel ornament of liberation Now, the author, this Karmapa, was someone who practiced both of the streams of instructions from the Kadampa and the Mahamudra traditions. And the foundation of these instructions is the foundation of instruction is the jewel under the liberation and the precious garland of the supreme path. And in particular, the jewel ornament of liberation is a description of the stages of the path of the three different types of individuals, and it's a really wonderful thing. So this is something that we need to take great interest in. So sometimes I think that we don't take enough interest in it as much as we should. So I think in order that people in the future people take interest in the jewel ornament, to have a real and see what a wonderful text, what a good text it is. And so in order for people to understand this, we are holding the conference. And so we will have this conference. The conference will continue for, we'll hold this for 3 years. And this is the first year of this conference. And so for the people who are participating in the conference, there are the conferees who have come from the different monastic colleges. We have 9 people. They came to Dharamsala and Jutta Monastery where I stay, and they spent about 2 months doing research and analysis. Primarily, they're looking first at what are the different editions of the Julianism. So looking at what these different editions, but the best of these we decided was the one from, and many scholars say that the best of the editions is the one from Yangpa Chen. So the basis for our research has been the Yangpa Chen edition of the text. And there are several different editions, the Bhutan Parma, the Dergye Parma, and so comparing the text with those, and also looking for the sources for the citations, we can if you think about the Joel ornament itself, there are many different citations in this. And so we're looking for the sources of these situations, and then deciding on these, looking up the difficult points, and then research and resolve the difficult points in there. And so we've done a fair amount of analysis of the text, and we'll have a conference on this. And so And so this is a way for those of us who follow the Dapokaji to remember the kindness of the incomparable Bujins. And this is a particular important, there's no better way for us to follow his wishes. And so please everyone keep this in mind. Perhaps actually and perhaps we will try to give the summaries of their papers. We'll be distribute to everyone where we can. If we do this, then maybe people can think about them. We'll be able to ask. We can read them, and then if you have any doubts about those, you'll be able to ask the authors of these directly.